Hello, this is Mrs. Johnston from the Thresher Library, and I'm going to share one more story with second grade. This is Aunt Chip and the Great Triple Creek Dam Affair by Patricia Polacco. And I'm hoping, boys and girls, that this isn't going to be backwards this time because I know I've made that mistake a few times. Anyway, this is a fabulous book. I love the author. We've talked about her before, and if you were in many of the second grade classes, the teachers use her books for a lot of different teachable moments. And she's just a fabulous author. Anyway, so I'm going to read you Aunt Chip and the Great Triple Creek Dam Affair. It reminds me a little bit of today and all the rain that we've had. And this is the title page. On the title page, you see the title. You see the author's name. And in this book, the author and the illustrator are the same. So usually on the title page, you have title, author, illustrator, and book publisher, which here is Trumpet Club Special Edition for this book. And here we go. We're going to read. Absolutely everybody in Triple Creek loved their TV sets. No one could remember a time when there wasn't a TV in every home, nor could they remember when they weren't watching TV. Their TVs were always on, and while they ate their meals, while they worked, while they played, while they slept, they even kept photos on their TVs, on their mantles, along with all the pictures of their family members. They loved their TV so very much. Now, everyone loved their TVs except for Eli's Aunt Charlotte. Aunt Chip, as Eli called her, didn't even own a TV. As a matter of fact, she had never owned a TV. This made her suspect in the eyes of the townsfolk of Triple Creek, especially since she had upped and taken to her bed well over 50 years ago and vowed never to get out of it again. No one knew why, really, though there was some talk that it happened just about the time that huge TV tower was built over on Cedar and Oak Street. And so here she is. She never gets out of bed anymore. I'm taken to my bed and ain't never getting up again, they say she shouted out of her window. But there will be consequences. Mark my words, she said, there will be consequences. And she settled down into her elder down blankets. There she is. Something has gotten Aunt Chip upset. Now, Eli loved his Aunt Charlotte very much. In spite of her strange ways, he visited her almost every day. He especially loved it when she would start into one of her great stories, like the one about the little kid in Holland who held back the sea by putting his thumb in the dike, or his favorite about a great white whale that lived in the deepest, darkest part of the ocean. Where do all these stories come from, Aunt Chip? He asked her one day. Well, some come out of thin air, some come out of my dreams, and some come right out of books. Whatever do you mean? How, child? He says, books? I thought they were over a long time ago. How do you get a story from a book? I mean, we use books all the time. They're like all over town, but use them? You mean you read them, don't you? She asked, leaning closer to the boy. Read? Well, what's that? Eli asked. Why, I knew it. I knew there'd be consequences, Aunt Chip hissed as she threw off her covers, and for the first time in 50 years, she let one foot touch the floor. Child, get me my clothes, she ordered. How come you getting up, Aunt Chip? Because I suspect there's a wrong that needs to be put right, she said, and I've got to see what's happened for myself. Now, Eli and Aunt Chip walked into the center of town, and Eli was right. Books were being well used for doorstops, to hold up roofs, to sit on, to eat on, to sleep under, to mend fences, to stuff potholes, to prop up sagging buildings, and even shore up the dam. Where's everyone gone? Aunt Chip asked in stunned amazement. There aren't any children playing, and I don't hear talking or laughing. Well, everyone's watching, Eli answered with authority. It's almost time for the cliffhanging episode of How the Dawn Churns. Well, there have been consequences indeed, Aunt Chip said. And then as she reached the corner of Cedar and Oak Street, Aunt Chip's eyes behold the steel-strutted TV tower. She choked with tears. Take me home, boy. I've seen enough. So she sees the biggest thing in town there, and it's the TV tower right in the middle of town. And they're back at home with the cats reading a real book. Now that afternoon, they sat together in front of the fire, sipping very strong tea. Do you want to know what glory used to be on the corner of Cedar and Oak? What, Aunt Chip? Eli climbed up next to her. Well, that's where the library used to be. What's a library? Eli asked. Well, it's a place where books used to be kept a long time ago, she answered wistfully. Well, why did they keep books in a building? Well, they kept them there for folks to borrow and take home to read. Look, child, and she went to a cabinet covered with cobwebs, took out a book and opened it for him. Dust fluttered out of its pages. Now look at this. These are words. They tell you about ideas and dreams and feelings. They take you to places far from here. They show you how to be fair and just, and sometimes they show you what happens when you're not. Books are a treasure. All you need is the key. The key? Knowing these words, she said. Then their meaning, she answered softly. It's called reading. But Aunt Chip, if the library had all those treasures, why would anyone take it away? Well, sir, she started, folks got so taken up by those TVs that they came to the library less and less. And pretty soon, folks started to forget what it was there for, all except the librarian. She was there all right every single day. Folks started calling her mad for sitting in that empty old building day after day. And finally, they carried her away, crazy as a March hare, everyone said. She was trying to stop the wrecking ball, but it still crashed into the walls and flattened the place. And then that giant TV tower came. Eli looked again at the open book that they both held in their hands. I want to read, Aunt Chip. Can you teach me? Of course, child, she said as she hugged him. So here was the library, the Triple Creek Library. Now, Eli took to reading like a beaver takes to gnawing wood, or a flea takes to a dirty little yellow dog, and within weeks he could read just about everything. And he did. He read labels on cereal boxes, covers on canned goods at the store, road signs, and all those things folks had memorized by their shapes. It wasn't long before his classmates at school, where TV sets had long since replaced teachers, noticed that he knew what things said on labels, covers, and such. Look, Eli, he can hear things that we can't, Celeste Appleby said one day. Eli was reading a peanut butter cookie recipe from one of Aunt Chip's cookbooks. Well, how come we can't hear what you're hearing when you look at this book? Hollis Lonsbury asked. Well, I'm not a hearing it, Eli said. I'm a reading it. It's kind of like I can see it talking. Eli read about a princess in a kingdom, and he read about isosceles triangles, and he read about the sinking of the Titanic. At last, one boy announced, we want to read too, Eli. And they all cheered, yes. And that's when Eli took the children to go visit Aunt Chip. All right, she said when they asked, but I don't have enough books. We'll need more. And that's when the children started borrowing books from all over town. They took them out of potholes and off fences and from the tops of roofs and out from under sagging buildings. And they borrowed, and they got them from everywhere they could find them. And pretty soon Aunt Chip's house echoed with small voices reading from Aesop's fables and Grimm's fairy tales and stories by Hans Christian Andersen and Charles Dickens. Now these children, they couldn't get enough. There she is. She is pleased as punch, teaching these children how to read. And one day, Eli and his friends were passing under a very tall wall made almost entirely of books on the edge of town. The original wall had crumbled, and the townsfolk had rebuilt it. And Eli was reading the spines of each book in the wall when his eyes caught the gold lettering of a lovely green one. Help me up so I can reach it. He could hardly wait to touch it. The children stood on each other's shoulders until Eli's fingers could finally reach the book. Moby Dick, he exclaimed as he pried it loose. Moby Dick sloshed out of the wall with a watery, wet flunks. Got it, he said. And that was when they all heard a loud, low rumbling sound that grew louder and louder. And they looked up and they noticed a trickle of water coming out from where Moby Dick had been in the wall. And the trickle, it got bigger and bigger, and the rumblings got louder and louder, and the ground under their feet started to shake, and they noticed that they were ankle deep in water. Let's get to the bluff, Eli called out. And when they reached the bluff and looked down, they saw it. The wall of books had become the new Triple Creek Dam, and it was bowing under the weight of the lake behind, and then a thundering and a watery roar, and it exploded. The explosion sent the books flying straight up. They hurtled so high into the air that they disappeared clean out of sight. Tons of water surged down past Dead Man's Bluff and past the bucket of Sud's Saloon, and it was heading straight for the TV tower next to the bridge at Cedar and Oak Streets. And the wall of water hit that tower with such force that it crumbled it like tinfoil. There it goes over here. Boom, gone. Now, when the children got into town, they saw the grown-ups walking around looking confused and dazed. My TV went off for no reason at all, a woman said as she grasped the photo of her TV to her chest. I can't live without my sports recap of the replay of Sunday's game, a historical man screamed as he collapsed with a serious case of the vapors. Well, who could have done such a thing to our town? The mayor called out in anguish, clutching his remote control. Well, it's all my fault, Eli finally said above the din. Then Aunt Chip came and stood by his side. All I wanted to do was read this book. Eli held up a copy of Moby Dick. Read? Did you say read? The mayor asked as the townsfolk recoiled in disbelief. Yes, he wanted to read. Why? Folks haven't done that around here since I can't remember. If you were meant to read, we would have been born being able to do it. It must be bad if doing it made the dam break and take out the TV tower, the crowd roared in agreement. Just who taught you how to read? The mayor asked as he drew closer to Eli, and Eli gestured to Aunt Chip, and there was a collective gasp. I knew it! I've heard stories about her. Crazy old coot, a man hissed. She isn't crazy, Eli screamed. And all the children came out from the crowd and surrounded Aunt Chip. She's been teaching all of us how to read, all of us. So they all go up and they give her a big hug. He says, so you've been borrowing books from all over town, Eli said, and that's where they've been disappearing to? A woman snapped. You'll just have to put them all back. Well, they'll do nothing of the kind, Aunt Chip said with resolve. 50 years ago, I didn't have the strength to stand up to the city fathers, but now I do, she said as she locked hands with the children. Eli looked up at his Aunt Chip. It was you. You were the librarian, and that's why you took to bed. If we were meant to read, there surely would have been a sign, the town soothsayer said as he gazed at the horizon. Well, sir, exactly at that very moment, all them books that had been blown out of the dam started to fall right out of the sky. Look, a child said excitedly, it's raining books. And sure enough, as the crowd looked skyward, down came a shower of books. Fairy tales, classics, dictionaries, encyclopedias, fiction, nonfiction, black books, brown books, green ones, red, leather brown, canvas back, paperback, books, and more books. This is a miracle, the town soothsayer exclaimed. For the first time in years, the townsfolk were filled with the wonder that only a child knows. They embraced one another and danced with joy that such a glorious thing had happened to them. Clearly, it was a sign. But the miraculous event that had taken their eyes off their TV screens long enough for them finally to see what their town had become. I had no idea, the mayor said sadly. I told them there'd be consequences, said Aunt Chip. But you can change all this. Get to reading again, Titus, she said to him. That's a start. But none of us know how to read, a very large man said as he stepped out from the crowd. And a little girl came up to him. She said, I'll teach you, Daddy, she said quietly. She took his hand. And then one by one, the townsfolk stepped forward, and one by one, they were joined by their children or grandchildren. A chorus of small voices saying the same thing over and over. I'll teach you, Mama. I'll teach you, Papa. So imagine that. The children are going to teach their parents. Well, sir, Triple Creek wasn't the same after that glorious day. Folks were fixing up their homes and rebuilding thanks to the books on remodeling and building that they were reading. They were planting gardens and parks because of books on gardening. And they were sitting on their front porches again and talking to one another. Rousing conversations and laughter could be heard everywhere as folks talked about magazines and books and newspapers. Understand, folks still had their TVs all right, but they were wise about what they watched and for how long. They had so much else to do. And people began moving to Triple Creek in droves. A Chinese restaurant, a theater, a movie house that brought in movies from as far away as Moose Jaw, clear up in the Upper Peninsula opened. Giovanni Gorgonzola, the world-renowned tenor, came and started a real opera company. And finally, a new school was built where the old one had stood with real teachers and lots of books, including a 322-page book called Moby Dick. But the folks were most proud of their new library. Do you know the ribbon-cutting ceremony attracted dignitaries from all over the country, including Jubilation T. Fogbound, the great senior senator from our great state of Michigan. But it was the mayor who escorted the new town librarian into the new building and sat her at her desk personally. She once again took her rightful place, which had been hers 50 years before. And who was that librarian? Well, it was Aunt Chip. Now, I said that a great many stories are true, though some may not have happened. You'll have to judge for yourself about this one. But next time you hear about a library being closed, you'll know that there will be consequences. And if you hear folks say that there won't be, just have them read this here book. And as for Eli, well, he grew up, he went off to college, and he studied journalism. He came back to Triple Creek about 8 years ago, and he started the town's newspaper, and he called it the Triple Creek Herald Consequence. I've heard that that little paper won an international award for first-class journalism and excellence that very year. He keeps the trophy right there on the shelf behind him, next to the tattered and well-loved copy of Moby Dick. Now, this book is dedicated to stubborn librarians everywhere, but most especially to two educators and advocates for the minds of children. My mother, says Patricia Polacco, Mary Ellen Gaw Barber, and my friend, Dr. Charlotte S. Huck, and to one great kid, Michael Christopher Molesky. So this book, I hadn't read it in a very long time, but for some reason it popped in my head today, and I just had to read it to you all. Sometimes folks talk about, we've closed our libraries, and you're doing drive-through maybe at the downtown library or Northgate or even up here on Signal Mountain. Well, at least you can still get the books if you put them on reserve, and I'll try to help you if you email me, boys and girls, or your parents email you. If you need something, I'll try to help. And I've put out there on the website, there are 2 different sites now that you all can get ebooks from, and I hope you'll still continue to read at least 20 minutes a day just for fun, things that you love, things that are nonfiction and things that are fiction. And I wonder, what do y'all think? Aunt Chip and the Great Triple Creek Dam Affair. Is it fiction or is it based on truth? Y'all have a great day.